There are three questions that the committee asks of every nominee, and I'm going to ask each of you to respond briefly with just a yes or no. Dr. Shogun, we'll start with you, and then we'll work down the table for each of these questions. First, is there anything you are aware of in your background that might present a conflict of interest with the duties of the office to which you have been nominated?
No.
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 Second, do you know of anything personal or otherwise that would in any way prevent you from fully and honorably discharging the responsibilities of the office to which you have been nominated?
No.
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 And lastly, do you agree without reservation to comply with any request or summons to appear and testify before any duly constituted committee of Congress if you are confirmed?
Yes.
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 Great. Well, thank you. Dr. Shogun, you have a big job ahead of you, and I think it's important for the committee to hear from you. How do you view the role of NARA in ensuring compliance with the records laws and the several records laws that we have across federal government?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that question. The National Archives leads the federal government in the records retention policies and procedures, and in particular relies upon federal agencies that supply those records to provide the National Archives with paper records at this point in time and in the future digital records so that the repository of our nation's story can be complete.
So as archivist, what specifically do you plan to do to improve the federal records preservation process that we currently have?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that question. I think that the major challenge for the National Archives going forward will be the transition from a primarily analog or paper repository to a primarily digital repository. And when that does happen, when the records start to come from federal agencies in that digital format and not the analog format, there's going to have to be a lot of work and communication with federal agencies so that those records come to the National Archives in the right format and with the right information and descriptive data so that the records can be useful and available to the American people.
Clearly a big undertaking and to make those kinds of changes, plus to go back and digitize an awful lot of records that have already been placed there in a paper format. Do you believe that NARA has the resources it needs to meet this challenge? And specifically, what sort of technological needs do you anticipate requesting in the future?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that question. I think the resources at the National Archives can be a challenge. Of course, all federal agencies have to work efficiently and effectively. Given the big tasks that are ahead for the National Archives, if I am confirmed as Archivist of the United States, I plan to support a set of very common sense proposals that will enable the National Archives to transition into its digital future. As I understand it, right now, Mr. Chairman, there is the development of a new technology system that will enable the receipt of all digital records. That's both born digital records and records that have been digitized. And that technology system, I can say, is being built in an iterative way called Agile Development. And I was very happy when I heard that because that means that it can be built in a step-by-step process. And of course, if I'm confirmed as Archivist of the United States, I look forward to working with the development of that IT system so it can be really the guidepost for NARA's future.
As I mentioned in my opening comments, veterans' record requests are high. There's a huge backlog, and we certainly owe the men and women who have served us with honor and distinction the ability to get those records in a timely way to access benefits that they've earned and other needs for those records. So as archivist, how do you plan to work to reduce this considerable backlog? And tell the committee how you view this as a priority if confirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that question. I view this as the most important discrete problem facing me if I'm confirmed as Archivist of the United States. The backlog has been reduced considerably, down from 600,000 requests down to about 440,000 requests. This issue is very personal for me. I have many veterans in my family, so I understand its importance. I also know that the staff at the NPRC in St. Louis has been working tirelessly since March to reduce this backlog. So if I am confirmed as Archivist of the United States, it will be my priority after confirmation to make a trip to St. Louis. It would be my first trip as Archivist of the United States. I want to get there on the ground, meet the leadership, of course, of the NPRC, meet the talented staff of the NPRC, and come up with a sensible plan of how we can reduce this backlog at a faster pace.
Right, right. Dr. Shogun, do you believe that NARA has a role in promoting government transparency and public access of records?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I do.
So what will you do as an archivist to improve public access?
Thank you for that question. I think that transparency and access is really intertwined with digital. You can access the records at the National Archives in a number of ways. First, you can come and visit the National Archives here in Washington, D.C. to view our founding documents and see some of the records in person. If you're a researcher, you can visit one of the over 30 archival research rooms all across the United States and engage the records in a very meaningful way. But most Americans are probably going to interact with the records of the National Archives through digital means, online, through the Archives catalog. And so that's why the digital future is extraordinarily important for the National Archives. Right now, there's about 200 million digitized copies of records in the catalog, which makes it the largest digital archive in the world. And as I understand it, the Archives is planning to go to 500 million digital copies by 2026. And if I'm confirmed, I'm going to make sure we hit that mark and hopefully exceed it.
Right. Well, thank you, Dr. Shogun, for your responses. Ranking Member Portman, you are recognized for your questions.